At this time, I would like Len Maselli to come up. He's going to tell you a little bit from a perspective of a pastor how Cornerstone Community Well has impacted the ministries around town.
Well, good evening. And I think we need to give Carol Myers and Jeff Myers, who did so much of the work here, a round of applause. You know, as we look around the volunteers here, they do so much of the work. Without the volunteers and Carol and Jeff, there would be no Cornerstone Community Well because there's no paid staff. And yet, they all have full-time jobs and yet put in all those hours at the end of the day. And so we're so grateful, especially for our director, Carol Myers. A lot of hours that she's putting in and really wouldn't be running without her efforts in there. As pastors, we had this unique view. When pastors get together, can you imagine what they talk about? Well, one of the things we talk about when we get together, and I'm part of the Fairfield Area Ministerial Association, which the participating churches in that association actually spawned the vision for the well and have initiated its inception. But it is an independent organization with its own 501c3, so we're happy to see that take off and be an independent organization. But as we get together as pastors, one of the things we talked about over the years is how do we handle people dropping in the church every day, unannounced, asking for money, asking for help. We want to help them as pastors, and that's part of our mission is to help people. But what we found was that we were getting pretty much overwhelmed and not really having the resources, quite frankly, to help them all the way that we could have helped them. And so as we started envisioning the well, we talked to Carol, and Carol was part of a ministry in our church that helped many of the women that would come in. And as pastors, we said, what if we pooled our resources? What if we had a one-stop shopping, a place where somebody could come, instead of getting the phone book out and going through the phone book and calling every single church in the phone book, what if there was one place that they could call and receive any of the services, in fact, more than any one church could ever give? And that really kind of spawned the vision for the Cornerstone Community Well. And as pastors, it's been a blessing, because what we have done is try to shift not only just the calls over there, but also our goal is to shift resources, finances, and volunteers over to the well. And that has been easier for folks coming in. They don't have to try to go to 10 churches and then maybe get 8 no's and 2 yeses and not have their needs met. They're able to go one place and not only just maybe have a financial need met, but they also are going to have the opportunity for a personal connection. And hopefully, and I know we'll be talking more about this, but have also that opportunity to get trained in a way, to get encouraged in a way, to get helped in a way, to help them help themselves in the future, right? Give a man a fish, he eats for a day. Teach a man to fish, he eats for a lifetime. And I know that's part of our vision as we develop. But it's been exciting for us as pastors. I know at Fairfield Friends Church, we would sometimes have 2, 4, 6, 10 people come in unannounced and just expect some help at the moment. Right now, we maybe get 1 or 2 calls max every 2 weeks, and immediately the well is getting known in town. And we praise God for the well, and it's really been a help to all the churches at this time. So we're grateful.
At this time, there is a song that I think very much fits what this is all about. And so Chris is going to play this song. It's called Do Something, and it's by Matthew West. Would you agree that God wants us to do something? The poverty that we have in our city is greater than any one of us knows. People who are living out of their vehicles, or homeless and maybe living on the street during the warmer parts of the months of the year. People who are living out of their car in the wintertime. And it is astounding to see that type of a situation. At Cornerstone, we don't feel that we have the resources right now to help people who are homeless. So we would like to see that become a part of our future. We aren't there yet. It takes a lot of resources to be able to make that happen. But we certainly can do whatever we can on this side of helping them from a homeless situation. We can help them to get the resources that they need. We can help them toward getting out of debt. Some of that's through education. Some of that's through giving them some money to help get those bills paid down. Some of that is helping them change their mindset. I would say that the greater challenge really is to help them understand that the lie that they're believing, that the poverty that they're in doesn't have to be the poverty that they live with the rest of their life. Helping them to understand that that is a lie is going to be one of the best things that we can help them with. So getting that positive reinforcement, walking alongside them is going to be an important part of this. Right now, when someone has a need, they call Cornerstone Community Well. We field those calls every evening and call them back. If we have any additional questions, we ask those questions at that time, and then we put them on a schedule. So all of our interviews at this time are done by appointments. We have had times when we have people call in and say, I need $67 before, this is our most recent one, I need $77 or $67 before the end of the day so that I don't have my electricity turned off. Well, we're all volunteers. There's nobody there during the day. So by the time we get that message, it's the end of the day and they've gotten their water shut off. It would be my hope that as a community we would come together and say, this needs to be something that we can staff, even with one person every day, so that we can help people in those situations. I'm going to back up just a little bit and tell you that I really feel honored to have the opportunity to share with you tonight. And I think the reason I feel honored is not because of the position I have at Cornerstone Community Well, but it's because I know that God is using the well to make a difference in people's lives. So when God takes the reins and he says, this is a good thing, I want this to continue, and we see things changing in the lives of the people who are either working there or who are getting help, it makes you want to continue on. So historically, Cornerstone came into existence due to a great financial need, and Len shared about that. In 2013, I had been asked by Pastor Len, specifically for our church, to help with the needs of women. Within a year, over the next 3 years, that quickly became assessing financial needs within our community. It was no longer just within our church. I was blessed because I always had a team of 3 people, and as we would have people with needs coming to our church, we would each take our turn and field those calls, do the interview over the phone. But we also saw a great need to be face-to-face with these people. You know, who does an interview over the phone and really knows what the person on the other end of the phone is going through? Or if you're the person calling in and needing the help, do you really get a feel for how much the person on the other end of the phone really cares? So as Pastor Len and I would meet, we determined that it would be a good thing for us to have a location to go to. So the church blessed us, and we received an office to use in what had been our parsonage. Our challenge again was, with only 3 people able to volunteer at a time, trying to get 2 people lined up at the same time somebody had a need became a real challenge. So being in one location and having volunteers on specific nights, you know you always have the people there to do the interviews. You know you always have the staff there to show them that we do care about them. I'm going to fast forward a little bit through this because Len has covered some of the things that I was going to speak to you about. But so I want to tell you how supportive the Fairfield Area Ministerial Association has been. When I went and visited with them, they were so good to ask a few questions. And did I have all the answers? No. But I could do some research. I could come back to them and share with them what I learned or how I thought it should look. And I was very impressed with the pastors in our community. Not only was I impressed with their reaction that they wanted to support something that I was standing up for, but I have gotten to know so many of them on a personal level. And Fairfield is very blessed to have the pastors that we have here. Since opening Cornerstone on July 20th of 2017, Cornerstone Community Well has dispersed a grand total of $11,577.61 to 97 households in Jefferson County. Now that is a prerequisite. You need to live in Jefferson County. You have to prove your need. So if they have a need for a payment of a bill, they have to bring that bill in with them. And then we make a copy of that and a copy of their driver's license. We have had just one person say, I don't want you copying my driver's license. And that is certainly their right to do that, but then we aren't able to help them. We need them to work with us. Part of the reason that we do that is so that when somebody comes back for another time for assistance, as we're going through their past paperwork, we already know what they look like. And the blessing of that is, you know that you have already established a one-time relationship. You're on your second part of the relationship, second visit for the relationship. And you know that it truly is that person who's coming back. As we go through the interview process, we have a 3-step process. So the first part is sitting down with them and saying, what is your need? Because that's all they have on their mind. They aren't thinking about anything but the need they have at that moment. That is so important to them that they can't hardly think of anything else. So getting through that first page and finding out what their need is pretty key. The second page, we ask them about their income, how they get their income, and their expenses. We have quite a list of things that we have typically received from them as being income, and so we know what questions to ask. And then when it comes to their expenses, everybody has a light bill, everybody has specific bills that help keep their house running. So we have the opportunity then to take a look at their income versus their expenses. We add those up, and we can tell them right then and there that your challenge isn't so much that you have a problem with this one bill, but that your expenses are always greater than your income. Or we have had a couple of instances where the income was greater than their expenses, and we know at that point that it's definitely a budgeting situation. We have a referral sheet. The referral sheet gives them places to go to for discounted clothing, for food. Let's see, we have a couple places on the food list of where they can eat for free. You know, we have our Tuesday night come to supper at the Lutheran Church that several places around town have brought in meals to serve to those who have a need. And that, by the way, I want to give them a plug. Come to supper is such a good thing. And they say, you know, we don't want just people who are down in their luck and struggling. We want people to come alongside them and eat there with them too. So if you have a Tuesday night when you are able to go to come to supper, I would really encourage you to go and come alongside somebody else who's there and get to know them. Kessel's Conoco is working with us on vouchers when they have a need for gas. Maybe they have an appointment that they need to get to, but they don't have enough funding to get them where they need to go. And so they have to prove their appointment to us. And then we send them with a voucher, and they have a certain period of time that they need to use that voucher, and they can only go once during that time to Kessel's Conoco and fill up their tank and get to their appointment. Because I think that this is something that would be on your mind, we tend to have more women, and then children are the next in line, and then men. I think with that said, it doesn't mean that we have men in our community who don't have the same need. But what we are seeing is that the men who are on the list tend to be married, and their spouse will come in with them, so they've decided together that they can come and get assistance. We also disperse funds for Salvation Army. 80% of our funding during bell ringing gets to stay in our community. Up until this year, it had been 70%. This year, they changed it to 80% that would come back into our community, which has been a huge blessing. However, this year donations were down, and so that changes how much we can utilize the Salvation Army funds. We have currently received funding from churches, individuals, and FAMA. FAMA being an organization that has chosen to pick the Easter week, or the week before Easter, to have people go to different churches. I love that because you're getting to know the other pastors in the community. You're getting to hear a message, a good solid message throughout the week. And they have utilized some of those funds toward Cornerstone Community Well. Because we are fully funded through donations, we require that applicants first seek entities that receive tax-funded dollars like CETA and General Relief before they come to us. So if they go to CETA or General Relief and they don't qualify, they can still come to us. But we feel that it's more cost-effective, more fiscally responsible to have them go to a place where our tax dollars have already funded. Assisting applicants with expenses allows us to share God's grace by giving towards a financial need and sharing the love of Jesus Christ through funding and praying with them. We encourage applicants to find a church home, to attend regularly, and to grow in relationship with God and the church family that they come in contact with. Every time we bring in someone into the presence of the Lord, something happens. Our goal is to dispel that lie that I talked about. You don't always have to be poor. And this belief and lack of planning has led applicants to continually return for needed assistance. And then men. I think with that said, it doesn't mean that we have men in our community who don't have the same need. But what we are seeing is that the men who are on the list tend to be married, and their spouse will come in with them, so they've decided together that they can come and get assistance. We also disperse funds for Salvation Army. 80% of our funding during bell ringing gets to stay in our community. Up until this year, it had been 70%. This year, they changed it to 80% that would come back into our community, which has been a huge blessing. However, this year donations were down, and so that changes how much we can utilize the Salvation Army funds. We have currently received funding from churches, individuals, and FAMA. FAMA being an organization that has chosen to pick the Easter week, or the week before Easter, to have people go to different churches. I love that because you're getting to know the other pastors in the community. You're getting to hear a message, a good solid message throughout the week. And they have utilized some of those funds toward Cornerstone Community Well. Because we are fully funded through donations, we require that applicants first seek entities that receive tax-funded dollars like CETA and General Relief before they come to us. So if they go to CETA or General Relief and they don't qualify, they can still come to us. But we feel that it's more cost-effective, more fiscally responsible to have them go to a place where our tax dollars have already funded. Assisting applicants with expenses allows us to share God's grace by giving towards a financial need and sharing the love of Jesus Christ through funding and praying with them. We encourage applicants to find a church home, to attend regularly, and to grow in relationship with God and the church family that they come in contact with. Every time we bring in someone into the presence of the Lord, something happens. Our goal is to dispel that lie that I talked about. You don't always have to be poor. And this belief and lack of planning has led applicants to continually return for needed assistance. So I told you about pages 1 and 2 of our interview, but I didn't tell you about page 3. And page 3 is our opportunity to find out where they are spiritually. We think that's very important. Cornerstone Community Well is very much based on Christian principles, and we take the opportunity to find out if they have a Bible. If they don't, we've had Bibles donated to us by some churches that were able to give them a Bible. For some, it's the first Bible they've ever had. For others, well, I think I have one, but I'm not sure where it is. And I'm going to say it's better to err on them having 2 Bibles than it is for them to not have a Bible. Then we take the opportunity to pray with them. And I would bet that the volunteers who do the interviews will tell you that you'll find some people who you would never believe, just from the question and interview time, you would never believe that they would get emotional. And then after you pray with them, or during the time you're praying with them, you realize that they're crying. And I do believe, it's like Jason said, it gives the Holy Spirit an opportunity, because that door is open at that moment, and they know that there's something different happening at that moment. So what does the future hold for Cornerstone Community Well? Well, we're currently working on the basement, trying to get it ready for classes for our applicants. The classes would be on budgeting, writing resumes, applying for jobs online, how to stretch your dollar, and leaving debt behind instead of leaving behind debt. We also see in our future an opportunity for community service for our applicants to give back to their community. And one of our, I call it a lofty goal because I believe it's what God wants us to do, is that we would find a location where we would be able to have people, whether they're handicapped or whether they have struggles walking, whatever their need is, they would be able to walk in without going up steps. We currently have 3 steps, and is it possible to get that picture back up? Thank you.
Oh, maybe. Jason says yes.
Fortunately, Jeff took some pictures for me this morning, so I would have a little bit to show you. But we are at 1208 South 5th Street. That's a 5 street. And it is a beautiful building. It took 4 months to remodel the main level and had a great group of volunteers to do that. So as you can see, there are steps outside. It's a small place, but it certainly meets our needs right now. There are, where the picture window is the reception area. The window to the left is one of the interview rooms. And then on the back side of that is a kitchen, a bathroom, and an office that I use for the administrative things that I need to take care of. There's the reception. So it is bright and cheery. It is an opportunity to share with people and let them know that we care enough about them to have a nice facility. That is an interview room. We have 2 chairs in the interview room in case someone brings a spouse along with them. We have had a couple of people who have caretakers, and it's important for the caretaker to come along with them as well. Oh, it's hard to see, but on the right side there is a file cabinet, and there is a chair there, and then there's a chair behind the desk. The interviewer always sits at the chair behind the desk, and then we always have a second person in the room during the interview process. That protects the ministry as well as giving the applicant an opportunity to know that we care enough to have 2 people there. Because one person who's doing the interview, right in the process of the interview, you can't always come up with questions that you think of later, but having that second person in the room, that person will say, so how does that work for you to go through whatever you're going through? And then of course we pray for them. This is the administrative office. It's just kind of nice to see a little bit about a building, even though what you're here for is to hear the speaking part of it. We have a resident squirrel.
Really good timing out there. This is one of our new volunteers. The 11 volunteers that we have, some would say there's probably a couple more just like that.
That is my husband, Jeff Myers. I seriously would not still be doing this if my husband weren't a part of it. Not because I don't like what I do like it. But I have spent so many hours at the well that I wouldn't see my husband if he wasn't a part of it. So I give him a lot of credit. So we need to relocate to a building with no steps. The bathroom in there is pretty small. I would love to see in our future a walk-in shower, laundry facilities, and classrooms on the main level. We're working right now on the basement to get it ready for classes, but that's going to be pretty hard for some people to get down those steps. We also have a need for 6 networking laptops for our volunteers to use, 1 for the administrative office, 2 for the interview rooms, 1 for reception, and 2 for the classroom teachers. And we need 4 desktop or laptop computers so that our clients can do job searches, apply for jobs online, do resume writing, those types of things. If you don't have much money, you don't have the internet. And if you don't have the internet, there's no need for a computer. So we see in our future that people will be coming and utilizing time there at the well so that they can accomplish those things. In 2017, aside from our Salvation Army funds, we received a total of $14,533.34. Now, I will tell you that 20% of everything that comes into Cornerstone is set aside for relocating and set aside for classroom materials, that type of thing. And the other 80%, the goal is to disperse that among those who have a need. Now, our typical amount that we would give to an applicant would be $100. I'm trying to fine-tune how we would determine what a cutoff would be. Recently, we have seen bills of $1,800 for Alliant Energy, $1,400 for Alliant Energy, and once your electricity gets shut off, they don't turn it back on unless that bill's paid or unless you have somebody in the family that is an adult that you can put it in their name. So getting them to the point where they see, oh, if you're willing to pay that percentage of my bill, I might be able to get the rest of it done. So we want to be an encouragement. So far in 2018, from the churches, we've received $3,873.25, and from individual families, we've received $435. Now, as you can understand, giving out $100 at a time or more, you go through money pretty quick. And we would strive to see 12 people a month, so we would go through $1,200 a month if we had that happen. January, February, and March tend to be our slow months. And we've decided the reason why, and Len Wright, having worked for Salvation Army, kind of helped me come to this, is because they're getting back checks for, I'm not sure how to say this. It's not a tax refund because they don't pay taxes, but if they file, then they get money back because of the poverty level that they're in. And when you're getting money back, it's hard to think about the other bills that you need to pay because you have money coming in and you're not used to that. So aside from that, Salvation Army only allows us to utilize their funding for clients. We can't use it for any of the upkeep on the building or to pay our bills. So that's why CCW has to exist as well. We utilize it for Alliant Energy, the City of Fairfield Municipal Utilities, LISCO, insurance coverage, and office supplies. And I'm trying to remember how much of that I had calculated up that we use per month. And I'm sorry I can't come up with that and apparently did not write that down. Volunteers are always needed. Right outside our facility right now, we had pulled bushes, but we have no landscaping. Again, I think it's important to let people know you care about them enough to have things looking nice. Is it necessary? Probably not. But if they come to a place that cares enough to have things looking nice, then they must care enough about me that they'll help me through this with the classes that I need to take, that they'll walk alongside me. At this time, I would like for you to ask any questions that you might have on Cornerstone Community Well, and then in a little bit I'll have Jason Henry, our guest speaker, speak. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. If you think of any at any time, the business card at your spot has our phone number for Cornerstone Community Well. Yes, Janice. We take in, well, out of the 100% that Salvation Army earns, we only get 80% back. We have a little bit of a discrepancy right now that I'm working with Salvation Army on. I believe this year it's 14,000 and some. The year before, and I believe that that's after we dispersed money in November, December, and January. So here's the interesting part of this. Cornerstone Community Well works on a calendar year. Salvation Army works on a fiscal year. So they operate from October through September. Once the September month rolls around, if you haven't used that money, it goes to Salvation Army headquarters and they use it for disaster funding, which is what the other 20% that they're keeping is going towards. So it's always going for good purpose. So we utilize the Salvation Army funds first, and I think that's kind of key for you to know as well. The funding that we get from them, when we turn in our kettle money at the end of December, then we don't hear back from them for a while. Part of it is because there have been several disasters that they've been helping with, and the other part of it is there are so many different Salvation Army disbursement sites that are raising funds that if we were the only one, it would be easy for them to answer us right away. So when they tell us how much funding we have to subtract what we've already spent in October, November, and December, and sometimes January, or sometimes February. So we kind of guesstimate that, okay, funding is down this year. Instead of dispersing $1,000 a month from Salvation Army, we're going to cut it down to $900 a month so that it'll carry us through the year. But I believe, and again, it's because I'm still working with them to find out why our numbers are different. I believe we have $14,000 left to spend for the rest of the year, which will carry us through to September because of their fiscal year. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you for letting me share about Cornerstone. Now I want the pleasure of introducing Jason Henry. Our guest speaker, Jason Henry, his wife Nancy, and 4 kids happen to be next door neighbors to our daughter and her family. We feel blessed that God has placed them in close proximity to my daughter and her family because, well, his oldest daughter is teaching my granddaughters how to swim. However, it's not through neighboring where I or the Cornerstone Community Well Board met Jason. My daughter had shared about the well in Pella, so last winter I and the pastors from FAMA went to tour the Well Resource Center. A February 2016 article talks about Jason Henry, and it says this, that our speaker grew up in poverty, but his family's poverty was not primarily due to a lack of money. His family suffered from poverty in relationships, mental health, emotional health, and addiction. Because of the poverty in Jason's family, his school years were a struggle and included things like moving 19 times before he graduated high school, a lack of engagement in those school-aged years, and a frustration for teachers and administrators in the school system. One year, Jason had missed 30 days of school. He had a 6th grade teacher say, "Jason, you will never amount to anything." However, Jason persevered. did well in school, and now holds undergraduate and graduate degrees in business. Jason spent his working career in manufacturing leadership roles. While he enjoyed the work, something was missing. Jason will tell you that in his prayers, the Lord asked him, "Jason, I gave you your past for a purpose. How are you using it?" That question began a journey that ultimately led him to the Well Resource Center in Pella, Iowa, where Jason became the executive director in 2015. God has certainly given Jason his past for a purpose. There is no doubt that God's plans have been greater than Jason's dreams. Please welcome Jason Henry.
All right. Can everybody hear me okay? You are going to find that I'm a wanderer when I talk. So it's going to be like watching a tennis match. We're going to go from one side of the court to the other side of the court. Thank you, Carol, for the nice introduction. You heard Carol talk about my education. So I spent college, I went to Iowa State, and anytime I speak to a large group like this, it always reminds me of college. So I want you all to picture, I don't know what there is in here, probably 150 or so people. Imagine I'm sitting in an accounting class. Sounds pretty exciting, right? Sitting in an accounting class, there's probably 300 people in this class. And the instructor is up on the board, he's writing out things for accounting, and it is dead quiet in the room, except about at that table right there, there is a kid snoring to beat the band. I mean, it is loud, it is booming, okay? The teacher is starting to get pretty perturbed by this, and he turns around and he says to the guy sitting next to him, "Hey, would you tap him on the shoulder and wake him up?" And like any good college kid, he said, "Well, you're the one that put him to sleep." So you can imagine the eruption of laughter that took place. People often ask me the question, so were you the one sleeping, or were you the one that you had to wake him up? Well, I wasn't either of them. But I tell that story because my goal is not to put you to sleep. We're going to talk about a lot of things tonight. I'll try to keep things moving. Just a couple of things to be aware of as I'm talking. I'm going to use the term the well a lot. When I use the term the well, I'm referring to our organization in Pella. I'm not referring to the well here in Fairfield. So be aware of that. If I refer anything to Fairfield, I'm going to say Cornerstone. All right, we good? Good on that? Are we ready to hear about some things? All right. When you think of poverty, what words come to mind when you think of poverty? Hopelessness, hunger. What are some other poverties we can have? Broke, so financial. Typically when you talk about poverty, people think it's financial. What other ways can we be poor? Pardon me, what was that? Affection, the relationships I have in my life, right? That can be a poverty for us. Spiritual, I can have spiritual poverty. I can have mental health poverty in my life, right? But I want to talk about poverty biblically for just a second. So I'm going to read a couple pieces of scripture. I will tell you, I love the book of James. And what I love about the book of James is he's pretty pointed about things, right? He tells us not only to have faith, but to live our faith, to walk our faith. And the scripture I'm gonna read to you comes from James 1:27, and I'm sure most of you have heard this before. It says, "Religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this, to look after orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself from being polluted by the world." Okay, everybody heard that? We got to watch over orphans and widows, right? But I want you to tune into the word polluted. What does polluted by the world mean? What does the world say about people that are poor? Let me ask you that question. This is the interactive part of the program. They're no good, right? There's judgment that comes, right? I would say the world also tells us because the poor can't take care of themselves, we have to do it for them. How many mission trips do we go out on where we are doing the work that they could be doing? Right? So I want to read another piece of scripture to you. Again from James. This comes from James 2, 5 through 7. And it says, "Listen, my dear brothers and sisters. Has not God chosen those who are poor in the eyes of the world to be rich in faith?" What he is saying is poor folks, people that deal with poverty, they can be rich in their faith because they're not dealing with other stuff, the noise of the world, the pollution of the world. So he says, those who are poor in the eyes of the world to be rich in faith and to inherit the kingdom he promised those who love him. But you have dishonored the poor. Is it not the rich who are exploiting you? Are they not the ones who are dragging you into court? Are they not the ones who are blaspheming the noble name of him whom you belong? Now, if I kept reading in James, the very next scripture that he goes into is love your neighbor as yourself. Right? So think about somebody in poverty. How do we serve someone in poverty? I want you to put that in your mind. I want you also to think about how can our generosity as a country, as a people, actually hold people in poverty. So the Well in Pella, we have a mission as an organization, and that is our mission statement up there. So I'm not going to read that to you, but you are going to notice some words that I've marked in bold. What's the first word I have up there? Combining. So you see lots of other things. You see the community up there, right? You see other words up there. The strength in the people that we serve. Combining. I looked this up in the dictionary. Combining means to unite for a common purpose. Our common purpose is serving people who have a poverty need, right? What's the second word that I have bolded up there? So when you think of hope, I want you to think biblically about the word hope. There are two definitions that will show up in the Bible around the word hope. The first definition, or the first word that comes up is the word trust. So as Christians, we trust in Jesus. As Christians, we trust that there is a direction we are going, right? The second word that shows up around the word hope is the word endurance or strength. So not only do I trust where I'm going, but I have the strength to continue going in that direction. Many of the folks that we see in our office walk in without hope. They don't know where they're going, and quite honestly, they're tired of running the race they've been running. They're looking for something different. That's where we want to step in through relationship, through getting to know that person, through connecting with that person. We believe that through relationship, once we get into that circle, we build that trust, we start seeing the gifts that God has given that person. And their abilities start to show up. They start to realize they can do a lot of this stuff themselves. What we have found is people in poverty, quite honestly, the world has held them where they're at. They've been polluted. We want to address that, okay? So when you think of the well, and again, we're thinking of the well where? In Pella, all right. This is a cartoon I always show to groups when I talk to them. So what a lot of ministries, a lot of nonprofit organizations will do is you can see this poor gal down here in the hole. I always call her Sally. So Sally's there in the hole. If Sally says, "I'm hungry," this organization up here is going to drop her a little bit of food. If Sally says, "I'm cold," another organization up here is going to drop her a blanket or give her a coat. Let me ask you this question. Do you think Sally's problem is that she's cold and she's hungry? What is her problem? She's in a hole, right? She cannot help herself. As the well, we want to help Sally out of that hole. And this is what I want you thinking about that looks like. You can see we've added a ladder to this hole. That ladder is a metaphor for building a relationship with Sally. Once we get to know her, there's a much better chance for her to get out of that hole. Not only that, but you'll see there's more people. Once we get to know her, she is more open to inviting others in to help. So through ministry, that's how we choose to serve. Meet Sally where she's at, get to know her, and help her find stability in her own resources. So let me give you just a few examples of the types of folks that we see in our office. Okay? We definitely see people that are struggling financially. One of the number one things folks will come into our office for is they need help with a utility bill. One of the very first questions we will ask a person when they say, I need help with a utility bill, is we will ask them the question, how much do you have to go towards it? Because we believe everybody has ability to help themselves, right? So that's extremely important. We deal with folks dealing with addiction. We see about 1,000 different clients a year. At least half of them are dealing with an addiction of some sort. Interesting little stat, Marion County, where Pella is at, in the state of Iowa, is the county with the highest rate of untreated addiction. And I'll say we see addiction in people that have no income source, and we see addiction in middle-class folks. So we see lots of addiction in the folks that we serve. We see people that are dealing with mental health issues. We see folks that are bipolar. We see folks with schizophrenia. We see folks with personality disorders. We see a lot of people who are lonely. They're just looking for a place to meet people, to have relationship, to have a positive influence in their life. And we certainly deal with people that are homeless. Okay? So let me give you just a little history of the well in Pella. And it's interesting to listen to Carol talk about Cornerstone here, because the journey that Cornerstone is on is very similar to the journey we were on, okay? So in 2011, there was a team that got together in Pella to talk about creating the well. And it really started out of a group of churches saying, hey, we got people come to our church every month looking for financial assistance. These churches started to talk to one another and realized it's the same people coming to all of our churches. We're not really helping anything. So what would be a better way to step into that? And out of that cropped the well. And the well basically became a resource center churches could refer to, and then we as the well could point them to resources for assistance. So our office, our Well Resource Center, opened in 2012. At that time, we were actually under a church. So a church supervised, was a big part of the financing of it. But that's how the well in Pella started. In 2014, we actually became a 501c3 organization. Okay? In 2014, we started offering classes to clients. We offered a life skill class called Getting Ahead. In 2014, we actually had a thrift store that is in our community approached us and said, hey, it was a nonprofit 501c3 organization. We are looking at making changes to the thrift store, and one of the options on the table is donating it to another ministry. So we took that donation, right? So this thrift store donated itself to the well. If you think about a thrift store, think about affordable clothing. If you think about it financially, 100% of the profit we generate off the store helps fund what we do on the ministry side. So lots of benefits we get out of this thrift store. So you can imagine from 2011 to 2014, things are moving pretty fast. Things are coming in. When we started doing class, when we had the thrift store, when we had the resource center, we were actually operating out of 3 separate locations in 3 corners of town. One thing I will tell you about people in poverty is they do not travel very well. Most of them are on foot. Most of them are on a bicycle. They're definitely not in a car. Okay? So if we're spread out all across town, it's not very easy to get us to one location. So in 2014, when our board started up, I was actually working in business. I was our chair of our board. I took us through a strategic planning session. And the reality was, up until this point, we had achieved what the initial dream was. Okay? But as we stepped into looking in the future, I challenge the group to dream big. Don't lock ourselves into what our ideas are. I'll tell you, the Lord's plans are way bigger than any ideas we can have. And you're going to hear as I share some of these stories how very true that is. So in 2015, we hired an executive director, so we took that step. That would be me. I was the one that was hired. In 2016, we consolidated all of our operations to one location. How many of you have ever been to Pella before? Hey, look at that. Anybody ever heard of the Well Thrift Store? It's by Tyson's, by Hy-Vee, on the southeast side of town. It is an 18,000 square foot building on the main level. We've got another probably 5,000 to 7,000 square feet on the upper level, so we're 20,000 to 25,000 square foot building. The thrift store takes up about 2/3 of that space. The other third is all of our ministry space. So in 2016, we said we're going to do a building project. When we did our building project, we did it as a leap of faith. We were going to renovate that building, consolidate everything into there. It was a $425,000 project. Okay? We did not have the money in the bank for a $425,000 project. I would nearly guarantee the churches you guys go to, if they wanted to do a building project, they'd wait for that money to be in the bank. Is that right? Absolutely. So we said, you know what? We're going to do this. We're going to leap. Okay? Didn't have the money in the bank. We started in January of 2016 doing demolition in this building. So we just had to clean a bunch of stuff up. So we started tearing walls down, started building it back up in March of 16. In July of 16, we moved in. In July to August kind of time frame, we started incurring debt out of that remodeling project we had done. I'm going to fast forward to December 23rd of 2016. I was literally had my jacket on, had my backpack on my shoulder, ready to go home for the holidays, right? Everybody knows that feeling. Shut the door, I'm ready to go. As I was walking out the building, I had a donor walk in. That donor handed me a $100,000 check. That $100,000 check wiped out all the debt we had on that building. God's plans are way better than our dreams, right? But it took that leap. It took that step. So now we're all located into one building. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the resources that we have. In 2017, so last year, we actually started a work program for clients. Anybody remember how many clients I said we served a year? About 1,000. 70% of them are struggling with work. They're either unemployed or they're underemployed. So 700 people. I will tell you, the businesses we have in town would love to have those 700 people working in their business. However, the folks that we serve, honestly, they're unemployable. They can get a job. There's all sorts of organizations that will help somebody get a job. Once they get it, they might have an emotional issue that happens and they lose their job. They might choose not to show up 3 days in a row and they lose their job. Nobody has taught them this is what being a good employee looks like. So we have partnered with businesses in town, and we're actually doing some manufacturing assembly at the well. We are employing clients with the long-term intention of release them to the businesses in town. And it is amazing seeing our clients do work for us because they have dignity. They have a lot of pride in what they're doing. They're getting paid, right? They get camaraderie. They get lots of benefits out of it. So we feel like that's very important in how we serve moving forward. So we have done, it seems like about every 2 years, we run past our strategic plan we put together. So we worked on another one for 2018, and you'll see some things up there that we are planning to do. We are a ministry. We do not hide behind that at all. I think every ministry would tell you they can use more Jesus. We want more Jesus in our ministry. I talked about the work program that we're doing. We are expanding programs. We're adding addiction recovery resources at our place. What we have found is those 1,000 people like to come and see us. So let's put things that are going to help them when they come and see us. We also believe that you can leverage business to help support your ministry. So we have a thrift store that I said 100% of the profit supports our ministry. Our work program that we have generates profit. Our building, we rent space, it generates profit. About 60% of our income comes from what we generate internally. The rest of it would be donations. 40% would be donations. God has provided in very abundant ways to us, and it's allowed us to do bigger and better things. So this set of pictures up here kind of shows a few of the things we have. If you look in that upper left-hand corner, you see basically a living room type of area. That is where we meet with clients. That is our resource center, our ministry space. Well Works is our work program that we have. This is actually 2 of our clients that are assembling a product. Acts is a ministry that is part of us that I always call them a community betterment ministry. We build wheelchair ramps in the community, paint houses, do yard work, do demolition, do things like that for folks that don't have the resources to do it. Getting Ahead is one of the classes that we offer. Inside of our building, we've started to co-locate other poverty resources. So the community food shelf is located with us. It is not us. It's not the Well. It is its own organization. They have their own board, their own leadership. They just happen to reside with us. The free medical clinic in our community resides with us. They have 2 medical exam rooms in our facility. You can see our thrift store there. This poster down in the corner, we are actually 2 weeks from now, we're doing an event in the community through ACTS, which is the Community Betterment Ministry. We've got about 20 projects lined up. There'll probably be about 150, 200 volunteers that are going out in our community to make improvements. Those are the things we want to drive, right? Those are the things we want to get done through ministry. So those are a few things going on at the Well. But I want to focus some time right now on kind of how do you serve inside of poverty, okay? So I started by talking about what's the Bible say about poverty and how the world at times can hold people where they're at. There's a great book out there that our team has gone through called Toxic Charity. And inside of Toxic Charity, the author, Robert Lupton, talks about how somebody goes through the system and becomes dependent. Okay? So I want you thinking about this in how we serve our communities. So he said, if you give one time, you will elicit appreciation. So I'm going to use this example. If I call up Carol and I say, Carol, let's go have coffee today. I'd like to visit about things. And we meet at the coffee shop. And we get up to the counter, she orders her coffee, I order my coffee, it's time to pay, I pull out my cash and I pay for both of us. Carol's going to say, Jason, that was so great, thank you so much, I appreciate you buying my coffee today, okay? So a week later, I call Carol up and say, Carol, let's get back together again, we'll meet down at the coffee shop, we'll have a discussion. I guarantee you, on the drive to the coffee shop, Carol is wondering, hey, Jason bought my coffee last time. I wonder if he's going to do that again for me, right? So she's anticipating the coffee that's going to come. So a week later, I call Carol up again and say, Carol, let's meet again. I'm having a good time. Let's meet again at the coffee shop, have another discussion. Now, on the way here, she's kind of expecting it, right? Jason's paid these first couple of times. I bet he's going to pay again, okay? So I do it a 4th time. Now it's an entitlement. Jason, you've bought me coffee 3 times. You need to buy me coffee now. By the 5th time, what do you think we have? Dependency. By the 5th time, she's driving to the coffee shop. She didn't even bring her purse anymore. She is dependent upon me to buy that coffee for her, right? So let's talk about how this plays out in ministry. So I'm going to share a real life story for the well. In our community, there is a great organization that every Christmas they do a Christmas gift program. You guys familiar with those programs? Family comes, signs up, says, I've got these 3 kids, we can't take care of Christmas, and somebody buys gifts for that family, right? Great ministry. So please don't hear what I'm not saying inside of this. Okay? So a woman comes into town. We immediately, so she's asking about Christmas gifts. We immediately refer her to this other organization, and she says, you know, that's great. I've stopped there already, but they are only in the Pella Community School District. Okay? We serve the county, so this was somebody in the county, but from another community. At the time, we were just starting up as a ministry, and the ladies in the office are like, well, here's this family, we need to take care of them. Let's just start calling around and see if we can find somebody to do gifts for them. So they actually found a dentist office in town that put some money together and bought gifts for this family. So you can imagine, we call this woman up and say, hey, we found somebody to get gifts. We've got the gifts here. Come pick them up. What do you think her response was? Note the board to your right. We gave once.
Appreciate.
Oh boy, this is great. My kids are going to love this. This is amazing. We're going to have a great Christmas this year. Okay? Fast forward a year. We get a phone call in November from a woman who says, hey, I don't know if you remember me or not, but I called last year. We were looking for Christmas gifts, and you helped us out. You found somebody to help us out. And we're like, yeah, we remember you. And she goes into this story, you know, things are still tough at home. I was wondering, is there a chance you could help us out again? Is there something you could do for us again? So what had we created for her? Anticipation, right? They helped me last year, they'll probably help me this year. So we, in our benevolent ways, said, all right, we'll get on the phone. We found the person, gave gifts again. Next year comes around. We get a phone call in November. Hey, I don't know if you remember me. And imagine, we haven't seen this person at all outside of Christmas gifts. You helped us out last year. Here's what she said. When can I expect to get the gifts this year? Have we helped her situation? Have we been polluted? Right? The world tells us the right thing to do is to do things for her she can do for herself. That's not how we want to serve, okay? I'm going to end. I've got 4 stories that I want to share that I think give more of an impact of how you serve inside of a poverty ministry. And remember where we started. We talked about poverty. We talked about financial and mental health and emotional health and spiritual health. And there's all sorts of different poverties. And in all reality, every single person in this room has dealt with poverty at some point in time in their life, right? So the first story I want to tell is about a 50-something-year-old man that was actually taking our Getting Ahead class with us. So we do this class called Getting Ahead, which is kind of a life skill building class. The students have to show up every Monday night for 15 weeks. They've got quite a commitment in it. They are invested. They want to be part of it. So we had class one night. At the end of the evening, I'm actually locking up the building, heading out, and I notice in our parking lot, off in the distance, there's this pickup sitting, and I know it's this man's pickup. He is sitting out on the tailgate. It was a beautiful evening. The sky was full of stars, right? And as I get closer, I realize this man is crying. So tears are just streaming down his face. And I get close to him and I say, hey, what's going on? And he said, I've got so many good things going on in my life right now. I've got a relationship with a woman that's going great. You guys treat me great. Things are looking up. Things are going really, really positive for me. And I said, that's great. What's with the emotion then? And he said, I'm waiting for the bottom to drop out. When things go good for me, there is usually a hard crash afterwards. And he said, my coping with that is separate from it. So imagine, here's a man who emotionally, when things are going good, he can't get away from it fast enough. Imagine what his life has to look like outside of when we see him, right? So I said to him, you know what, I have a hard time, first of all, sending you home in the state you're in. Are you okay to go home on your own? But secondly, you cannot be isolating yourself when you're dealing with these emotions. So I said, tomorrow morning, why don't you come into the well? We will find something for you to do. We'll find a project for you to do in the building. We'll find some way to plug you in. We'll get you around people, okay? Next morning, I pull up to the building at 7 o'clock. Whose car do you think was in the parking lot already?
Yes.
Right? So that is reaching out and loving someone, right? That is truly walking alongside and serving someone. Second story I want to tell. We had a young lady. I would put her age 30. 3 kids, all elementary age and younger. Okay. She is the 3rd generation in her family that has lived on welfare. Grandma lived on welfare, mom lived on welfare, now she's living on welfare. How does she know how to live? On what?
Welfare.
On welfare. That's all she's learned, is how to live on the system. We have walked with her for a period in time. We knew her very well. She came into our office one day and she was super excited about she had just got accepted into subsidized housing. Okay? So discounted to free housing she got. So she walks into her office, she's pleased as punch. Hey, I got housing, things are great. Now you guys need to get me beds, you need to get me kitchen stuff, you need, right? So that's a little bit of the mentality. We made the comment to her, now you know that that's not who we are as an organization, because we've been walking with her. We asked her, how much money do you have? She reached into her pocket, into her purse, laid all her money out on the table. She had like $13 to her name. And we said, we're going to take 5 of those $13 and we will give you a multiplier of 15. We'll give you a $75 credit in our thrift store to help find the things you need for the space that you've just moved into, okay? Now, $75 will go a really long way in a thrift store. So, had one of our volunteers walk around with her, help her pick her stuff out. She got up to the counter in the thrift store, and she had a comforter for a bed in her arms. And she said to the person, the retail associate that was checking her out, she said, my daughter is going to love this. I don't know if it had a character or something on it. There was something really special about this comforter that she had found. And she said, the best thing about it is this is the first time I've ever been able to go home and tell her I bought something for her. Right? We can feel really good about giving somebody something. She's lived in a polluted world, right? She has not had to learn, how do I do this myself? But look at the fruit that comes when she does. Look at the blessing that comes when she is part of the solution. She wasn't 100% of the solution. We still supported her. But she got blessed outside of it. All right, next story I'm gonna tell. This actually goes back to when I started working for the Well. Carol talked about the number of their gender mix that they have in the Well. I would say at this point in time, about 90% of who we saw were women. I was the only man on staff at our organization at the time. So if someone creepy walked in, who did they call, right? I was the one that got called. So imagine our offices. We've got this little office downtown Pella. We had a couch in the waiting room of this office. I get a phone call. My office was actually up on the second level of this building. I get a phone call one day from one of the gals down in the office downstairs, and she says, "Hey, there is a man down here on the couch, and Jason, he's freaking us out. You need to get down here as soon as you can." Okay? So I get down there, and I'm gonna paint a picture for you from top to bottom. Black ball cap down to the eyebrows, black sunglasses, tattoos, black clothing all the way to the floor. Got a picture? Would that freak you out? So I sat down and I talked to this man, and he said, this was April of 2000, well, this is probably May of 2015. I sit down and I talk to him, and he says, "I'm homeless. You guys are a ministry in town. You need to get me help. You need to get me help now." Now, somebody's knee-jerk response would be, I need to get this person a house, right? I need to find this person a place to stay. I will tell you this, just because somebody is homeless doesn't mean they have options. Quite often they don't like what their options are, right? Their options in rural America could be, I truly am sleeping in a picnic shelter, but it could be I'm sleeping on my cousin's couch. It could be I'm sleeping in my brother's basement. It could be lots of different things. So you really have to get to know the person. So as I sat there on the couch, I'm getting to know him. I find out, he's homeless because he got kicked out of the house. He's got some pretty serious mental health stuff going on. He does have options, right? So I talked to him for probably 30 minutes, 45 minutes or so. And I said, "Hey, you know what? We've had a really good discussion. I'd love to continue this discussion. If you're interested, come back again in a week and we can talk again." Okay? So I sent him out, no housing, said, "Come back and see me in a week." You know what the odds are that I thought he would show up the next week? About zero. But lo and behold, this man shows up the next week. And he starts doing appointments with us. And he shows up the next week, and he continues to show up. Well, we get a phone call in June of that year. He calls into our front desk, and he says, "Hey, I am really struggling. My mental health is really struggling today." And honestly, he was suicidal. Okay? And the woman that answered the phone said, "Hey, I want to pray for you." So she prayed for him over the phone. Okay? He ended up showing back up in our office the next day, and my office is at the top of steps, and I could always hear him coming. Okay? What I haven't told you about him is at every appointment we do, we offer prayer for the person at the end of the appointment. This is the only person we've ever had that declined prayer. That day he accepted it. Okay? So the next day he shows up in our office, and I can hear him stumbling his way up my steps. He peeks his head in my office, and I knew by the sound of it who it was, but when I looked at him, I had to do a double take because his spirit had changed. Something was different in him. And he said to me, he said, "Jason, I don't know what happened yesterday, but as that woman prayed for me, something inside me broke." He said, "I spent the entire day in tears." And this is a 40-something-year-old man, 45-year-old man. He said, "I don't know what it was, but I want more of it." Right? So fast forward, in October of that year, he asked me to come to his church where he was becoming a member. In November of that year, he asked me to go to his church with him where he was getting baptized. Okay? Does anybody remember when he initially came into our office what he was looking for? Housing. He got housing. He came in May. He moved into his housing in February. If we would have responded just to housing, what would we have missed? Right? I'd say this man found something way more than housing was ever going to provide. but it takes us stepping into it. It takes us getting to know that person who looks very different than us, who talks very different than us. And last story I'm gonna share with you, and then I'll wrap things up here. We had a young lady. This is actually pretty recent. And when I say pretty recent, it usually means we've been working with somebody for a year. So pretty recent's all relative, right? But we have been walking with this woman for 18 months, probably. And when we first met her, she walked into our office and she said, "I'm homeless. You need to get me a place to stay." Sound familiar, right? We spent time with her getting to know her. We found out she was homeless because she didn't have a job. She didn't have a job because she didn't have transportation. She didn't have transportation because she had an addiction issue, right? So what do you think finding a home for this person would have looked like had you not dealt with some of the other things that are going on? It would have been more struggle and more struggle. So we've been walking with her for 18 months or so. We had an appointment with her last November. And at that appointment, let me tell you the journey that she has been on, okay? She has her own apartment. She has her own apartment because she has a job. She has a job because we actually helped get her into a vehicle. We had somebody donate a car to us. We sold her that car at a discounted rate because everybody has some level of means, right? Sold her that car at a discounted rate. And praise God, she is in recovery from her addiction. So in 12 months' time, would you agree that that woman's made enormous progress, right? She said to us in this November appointment, we did our thing, we met with her, talked to her, did our prayer, stand up in the room, getting ready to walk out. She stopped at the door and turned around and she said, "I want to tell you guys something. I want to tell you thanks for telling me no and allowing me to believe I could do this myself." Right? She was no longer polluted. And that's really how we want to do ministry. So I'm just going to challenge you all, think about that in terms of ministry, how we reach out, how we engage, how we get involved. So how's that affect Cornerstone? The group came up to the well in 2016. We had moved into our building. We've maintained some level of contact. It's fun for me to watch the journey that they've been on. It's fun for me to think about dreaming big here and realizing God is going to bless this in so much bigger ways. I will tell you, this stuff, though, doesn't happen without people like us being part of it. Doesn't happen without resources, whether those resources be community resources, ministry resources, business support, volunteers. I don't know how many times I've heard volunteer stuff come up tonight. That's certainly a need, and certainly financial support is another big piece of it. So I would certainly encourage you, pour into the well here. You will see lives transformed. That is such a I think about what my days look like. That is an amazing blessing to see people move to a point of stability in their lives. We still see some that don't move. It doesn't happen with everyone, but it's pretty amazing when it does happen. You will see your community thrive. You will see your community prosper. Once we start looking at everyone in our community and work together as a whole, boy, it's pretty powerful. That's the way God designed us to be. And then I'd say, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to take a chance. Don't be afraid to dream big. So that's what I've got.
Amen.
Thanks I didn't see any heads nodding. Any questions or anything for me?
What's the next step?
So the question is, what's the next step for the well? I will tell you, John, we are continuing to dream big. I talked about the work program. We want to grow our work program to about 500 hours worth of work a week. We have right now, we've got 4 clients that we've plugged into work. Like I said, they are thriving. I would anticipate in 6 months they will be working for other companies in town, which is pretty awesome. We have a huge focus on addiction and mental health that we want to bring resources in to help with that, and families that are affected by it, not just the person with the addiction or the mental health, but that impacts so many more people than just that individual. So we want to be helpful to families in that. And you know what, I'm going to go back to, though, as much as we dream about things, we know there'll be something bigger, which is pretty awesome. All right. Anything else? I will hang around a little bit. If you have any questions, please stop up and say hi. And thanks for your attention.
So it's pretty amazing to hear how another organization that does the same thing, where they are today, isn't it? So I would like to pray. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for showing us how your plans are greater than our dreams. Thank you for the opportunity to hear Jason speak and his encouragement that this is headed in the right direction. God, we look forward to seeing how you unfold the story for Cornerstone Community Well. I ask that you would be with us every step of the way, guide and direct us to not enable people to stay where they're at, but to help them to grow from where they're at. To not have debt in their path, but to leave that debt behind. And help us to start new generations in a different direction, to take that lie away from them that they have to be in poverty because they've been in poverty already. In Jesus' name, I pray that you would bless each giver, that you would multiply the blessings that they receive from giving. God, I look forward to next year when we have an opportunity to share what's transpired in this coming year. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.